Good morning, friends, and welcome back to NPTEL online certification course on public speaking. My dear friends, in the previous lecture, we discussed elocution and recitation, which are a mandatory requirement for delivering talks, presentations, and other public speaking situations. But in public speaking, we also come across some small group communication such as conversation, negotiations, debates, and also group discussions. While small group communications appear to be easier compared with large group talks, but we cannot belittle the importance of small group communications. The present day world expects all of us to communicate in small groups also in order to find solutions to some problems, where decisions are to be taken on the basis of the views and opinions of many other participants and stakeholders. And that is why a talk on group discussion. Now, most of you might be familiar with this term group discussion. Some of you also might have experienced it in your school, college, and even in some of the job interviews, where in order to eliminate a big crowd or segregate people, a group discussion is conducted. Now, you might be thinking, what actually is group discussion and what are the salient features of it? How one can succeed in a group discussion? What are the prerequisites? Is group discussion simply an exchange of knowledge? But group discussion is a face-to-face public speaking situation which enables participants to exchange views, ideas, knowledge, and experiences on a given issue, topic, or question. Many of you also might be thinking of what could be the aims of a group discussion. Why group discussion? Human beings have always a tendency of making groups, and that is why they at times converse in groups also. But then, can group discussion be taken as a professional requirement in today's world? And if so, what are the aims? The aims of a group discussion are to resolve an issue through discussion, to exchange information on a topic, to evaluate students for academic purposes, also to assess a candidate's skill during a job interview, and also to evaluate or to measure the communication and decision making skills of candidates. Now, when group discussion has got all these aims, should you not try to get a sort of exposure to how one can be successful as a participant in a group discussion? We have in one of the lectures talked about debates, and many of you might be thinking that is debate somehow or the other different from a group discussion? Of course, my dear friend, let us also see some of the points which distinguish a debate from a discussion. You might have already experienced that when debates are organized or conducted, it actually is a sort of bilateral communication, because there are two people, one speaks for and the other speaks against. But when you talk about a group discussion, you can find that there can be more than two people, sometimes 6 to sometimes 12 people. Debates are competitive, whereas group discussion is a sort of cooperative situation where people cooperate. In debates, one candidate has got a rigid stance, whereas in group discussions there is no such rigidity, Rather, we often say that flexibility is the hallmark of a group discussion. In debates, you are provided with a restriction of time. Suppose you are given 10 minutes or 15 minutes. Of course, in GD also you are given time, but then there is no such thing as to who can speak for how long. So, there is a sort of versatility. One can spend more time either in listening or speaking as one so wishes. Now, what are actually the characteristics of group discussions? Group discussions is actually a dialogic learning process. It is a cooperative and not a competitive process. Here one has got the opportunity to share one's thoughts, opinions and views. But one advantage of group discussion is that it can help many participants to dig new insights, and every member can speak here. There is no such restriction. So, every member of a group can speak. Of course, here there is no such a structure as in debates where somebody will speak for and followed by somebody speaking against. But then group discussion is very unstructured and the role can shift from one person to another. Fine. Groups have got more resources and there is a flexibility in it. Now, another beautiful advantage of a GD or a group discussion is that a group discussion has got an inbuilt correcting mechanism. What is this inbuilt correcting mechanism? You can find that when somebody says something which are not relevant, which are not correct, not appropriate, suddenly the other member tries to jump in and say that perhaps this is not the right way or this is not the fact. Fine. So, there is an inbuilt correcting mechanism. Now, there are several techniques of group discussion. Fine. The very first technique is brainstorming technique. Brainstorming technique. Now, what do we mean by brainstorming technique? In this sort of group discussion, you will find that even though the members can be between 6 to 8 or to 12, and then the participants have to assemble round a table. It looks like a round table conference, no? The participants are assembled round a table and then the problem is stated, the problem is told and clearly comprehended by all the members, and all these members provide their suggestions, alternative views and criticisms which are forwarded by the members, and what happens? The ideas are now analyzed in detail within the spatial setup. Now, when you talk about a brainstorming situation or a technique, you will find that it can have two types. One can be a storyboard type where everyone is free to write or everyone is free to deliver his or her opinion. The other is that it is a lotus blossom type where people can provide their opinions and then 8 opinions, like the petals of a lotus, they provide 8 opinions, every candidate, and again that is discussed till they see that there is no further thing to be discussed. That is actually a lotus blossom technique. Now, the question is, such a sort of discussion of course can take time, can take a lot of time, isn't it? Then another is a nominal group technique. As the name itself says, nominal, by name. So, each member here can act, operate independently. They understand the problem, fine. In this sort of discussion, they write their ideas without any discussion, fine. And then each member, I mean all the members of the group, they are actually required to propose their own outlook, and lastly discussion takes place for reaching the consensus. For reaching the consensus. Now, there is one query in your mind that should group discussions lead to a consensus in most of the conditions, because groups have got more resources. They actually try to look at both the sides of the topic or the issue, and then they finally come out of it with several opinions and views and all. and decision is taken on the basis of the highest aggregate ranking. I mean, these ideas of these people, everyone is given the chance to prioritize their or rank order their own opinions, and the decision is taken on the basis of the highest aggregate ranking. Now, the last technique is called Delphi technique. Delphi. Now, what is the Delphi technique? A Delphi technique is just like a nominal group technique, but here members are not physically present. They are not physically present. Their ideas or opinions are collected through questionnaires. Every member receives a copy of the results, and then these results are discussed and decision is arrived at or reached by analysis of the responses of the members. So, it is actually a time taking, my dear friend. So, we can either go for brainstorming or we can go for nominal, because Delphi technique is, or it takes more time, and hence by the time decision is taken, it perhaps can be too late. Now, how to go? How to begin? What are the steps involved in a GD? Because on many occasions you find that when there are quite a good number of candidates, in order to segregate them or in order to lessen the number, many organizations nowadays have introduced a sort of GD. They provide a topic and they actually provide this topic to several groups, and out of that they try to find out, because their main aim is to find out the best out of that group. And again, it may be the initial round, again on the basis of it there can be another interview whatsoever, fine. So, what are the systematic steps to introduce the topic? Fine. In most of the GDs you can find either there can be a case GD, there can be a topic GD, it varies from organization to organization and people to people and institutions to institutions. So, introducing the topic, first the topic is introduced, and then another step is to contribute creatively or productively and to create a sort of encouraging ambience or an encouraging atmosphere. When there is a group discussion, you will find, because groups have a tendency to invite some amount of conflicts, because groups comprise human beings, and human beings may at certain point of time have conflicts. So, conflict is to be resolved, and then after resolving the conflict one can reach an effective conclusion. Now, many of you who have already experienced GD might have come across all these steps. So, the topic and the duration of the GD is announced by the chairperson. There will be a panelist, fine, or a chairperson. So, the topic will be announced. Sometimes if it is, it can be written on the blackboard, sometimes it can simply be put on computer screen, or sometimes you can also be provided with, and then they are provided some amount of time to think. So, in some organizations they provide you the paper and the pen so that you can organize your thoughts, and then the discussion starts, and when the discussion starts you will find there is a situation or a condition as to who should start the discussion. And you know, the panelists, they are waiting actually to see who is the initiator, who are the low participants, who are the high participants, who actually suddenly stops in and between, and why somebody stops, why somebody becomes silent, who are the silent participants. All these things are also taken into consideration. Now, when you are going to open a discussion, how to open a discussion? So, when you are going to open a discussion, please see that you start with a sentence, and the sentence has to be very pleasing. Hello everybody, today we are here to discuss a much talked about issue, and then perhaps maybe you can repeat. But since in many situations you will find, since the chairperson has already announced or written, there is no need to repeat it. So, you can, because you have less amount of time, there is a time regulation also. So, you have to start discussing. Now, if the discussion has been initiated, how can a participant contribute creatively? What are the ways? So, the participants first have to listen attentively to the topic, because most of the topics of the GD, they are actually created or crafted in such a manner that if you can simply look at the sentence, you can get many of the clues. So, listen to the topic carefully, then think critically, wait for some time, take some pauses and wait for the analysis of a reflective thinking. Sometimes you will find that there are some participants in the GD who are neither able to contribute their ideas nor they are contributing even for their own self. So, one should, in a condition as a participant, one should abstain from faulty and poor ideas. There is no need that you should simply speak for the sake of just speaking and you feel that you are contributing. There is no need of it. Actually, in order to succeed in a GD, one needs to have knowledge, and the knowledge has to be creatively expressed so that your thoughts are reflected from your own ideas. Now, we should also talk about creating a proper ambience or atmosphere in a GD. I mean, those people who are conducting such a GD will not tell you, because they are simply watching the participants. So, in order to create a convenient or an encouraging ambience, each member of the group has to see that it is one's responsibility. For creating friendly and cooperative atmosphere to encourage optimum participation of the members. Here let me tell you that if you are going to participate in a group discussion, you have two roles to play. There are certain roles and responsibilities. You have a dual role, my dear friend, dual responsibility. First, a responsibility as an individual member. I as an individual member will contribute, but I should also see that all the members of the group are also contributing. That is actually the collective responsibility, that is the responsibility of the group. So, in order to create an encouraging ambience, keep the discussion vibrant and entertaining. By entertaining, I do not mean that you should make fun. By entertaining, I mean the discussion should go in a very smooth manner. Perform in a less formal and more congenial manner. You need not be very tough, rough, gruff, snuff, fine. You should neither even snub those people who speak or who take an extreme step. You should also show interest in other participants' views. How is this possible? Only through your listening, my dear friend. So, you have to, we have already discussed listening. You have actually to be a very good listener in order to be a good speaker, isn't it? So, practice listening, my dear friend. Practice listening. So, listen and then contribute. And when you listen, half the battle is already won, my dear friend. Half the battle is already won. Argue not for the sake of merely contradicting the other person's approach. When you listen, and if you simply feel that simply to contradict you must listen, that's actually a bad idea, my dear friend. Don't argue unnecessarily simply to contradict or to oppose the views of other people. Now, as human beings, there are bound to come across some conflict. Here the conflict is a conflict of ideas, opinions. How to resolve this conflict? No conflict, fine, no drama of life. So, like in a GD, no conflict, no success in a GD. So, in order to resolve the conflict, what one should do is, one should initiate to act as a mediator. My dear friends, let me tell you here that one of the prerequisites of holding a GD is also to find out who the leader is, who has got this leadership trait in him or in her. So, in order to find out this leadership, now as a participant, what you must do? If you find that there is a moment of crisis, so try to resolve the crisis, mediate. And while mediating, be respectful to both the parties, empathetic, make use of empathy. Difference in ideas should be there, but then difference in idea should not turn into a sort of quarrel or into a sort of excessive noise. One must always try to adopt an objective outlook. So, when you are able to resolve the conflict, then comes the last step, and that is to conclude. Now, who should conclude? At times there has been a quarrel among people as to who should conclude. Now, even if somebody is concluding, even on your behalf, there is no need to intervene. So, the chairperson or the evaluator, of course, they will indicate you by some sort of indication or by some sort of alarm that the time is now up. So, the indication should be understood, and the entire discussion should be summed up concisely in 3 or 4 sentences. While concluding, do not add or mention any new idea towards the conclusion. This conclusion should be tantamount to what you have discussed, my dear friend. Now, what are actually the traits? If somebody wants to participate in a GD and wants to be successful, because one should try to ensure that not only one is a good communicator, not only does one have a good personality, not only one's communication skills are very effective, but also that one is a leader. So, for that, the very first requirement is you need to have creative ideas and knowledge, subject knowledge. But somebody may say, what if I do not know anything about the topic? My dear friends, there is nothing to worry, because even if you do not know, other people know. So, when Pankaj is speaking, if you can listen properly, then perhaps you can get or extract some points from Pankaj's idea, and then you can augment the idea by looking at the pros and cons, provided you must have the eagerness and the curiosity. One must have a good communication skill, my dear friend. And for that communication skill, what we already discussed in the previous lecture, one needs to have a proper articulation. I mean, whatever you are going to speak, speak candidly, fine, to the point. You have already listened. So, out of listening from other participants, you are now going to extract something and you are going to speak. And then, of course, leadership and managerial qualities. Leaders are not born, leaders are made in a GD. It is not that simply by having a physical prowess or a vocal characteristic which is loud enough you can become a leader. Not at all, my dear friend. You must have a sort of constructive idea, only then you can become a leader. If you must have the persuasive skill to intervene and mediate when the conflicting situation arises, you become a leader. So you must have that quality. And then you must also have the dexterity to use non-verbals. When we say non-verbals, what do we mean? Your body language. I mean, even if some of the participants doesn't speak in my favor or his ideas are not liked by me, I should not show such a sort of grimace that I will gobble him or her up. No, my dear friends, ideas are always welcome. So one should try to ensure politeness, not only through body, not only through gestures, not only through gesticulations, but also one should give them a proper decorum by ensuring one's behavioral skills. And then comes problem solving and conflict resolution skills. Not everyone can have these, but then one can always try and one can always get to learn these things, though with practice. Now, you might be thinking that what sort of participants one can come across in a GD and why conflict arises. My dear friends, participants can be a type of driver. Who is a driver? Driver is one who drives. Driver is one who initiates. Driver is one person who has got a self-righteous attitude, who believes that he is the only person who can outrightly reject others' views. He is the only person who can impose his own views. He will always try to snub those people who are not participating. I mean the inert speakers, the inert participants. Not everyone can speak in a GD. So if you find that there is one person who doesn't contribute much, then perhaps if you simply try to snub him, then perhaps you are a driver. But then by driver, what should we understand is that one should try to initiate the discussion no matter how. But remember that you have to be polite throughout. Then another category is amiable, a person who is very much mixing but then he doesn't have his own views. He will simply be supporting, yes, what Mr. X says, I go with him, fine. But what do you say? Fine. So one should always try to avoid a taciturn attitude, and such a person who is amiable, he actually tries to avoid conflict at all costs. Then there is a democrat. A democrat is a true person in a GD. So the word democrat itself tells a lot, that he only can be an ideal leader. He will reign the driving seat. He will encourage those people who are reticent, who are silent. He channelizes the discussion towards the right path, and he not only contributes creatively, but he also volunteers to resolve conflict. There is one more category, my dear friend, which we can call bulldozer. Who is a bulldozer? A bulldozer is a person who is very rigid. Fine. A bulldozer is a participant who is very rigid, my dear friend. How rigid? Actually, he will not listen to anyone. He will simply try to dominate the discussion by his physical prowess and by his vocal prowess. Now, there may be a question. How can we control a bulldozer? Try to find out some fault in the bulldozer's ideas, and you will find the bulldozer comes to one's normal self. As I said earlier, that the panelists also have an aim to find out who the leader is and what sort of leader they are in search of. My dear friends, actually, leader is one who tries to influence the group by his constructive ideas, and leader is always goal oriented. There can be a designated leader where in GD this is not possible. There can be an implied leader, a group member to whom others defer owing to his rank, expertise or knowledge. Such a person also is not applicable as a leader in a GD. Rather, leader is an emergent one in a GD, a leader who emerges, because a leader is one who tries to bring you, pull you out of the turbulent situation. A member who assumes the leadership by his assertive personality and constructive ideas. Let us take a quote here by Warren G. Bennis, who says, leadership is the capacity to translate vision into reality, but true leaders are those who actually try to give forth their constructive suggestions. What can a leader do? I mean, leaders' role vary from one situation to another, but then there are procedural tasks, there are functional tasks, you can have a look at it. But in a GD, a leader simply tries to mediate, try to resolve conflict, fine. And remember, you are also trying to ensure that you have the leadership quality. And how can you do that? With the help of your constructive suggestions, with the help of your ideas. In other situations, the leaders have to decide the time, venue and other things, but in GD, leaders are to emerge. So, leaders can emerge out of turbulent conditions. Now, in a GD, you will find leaders will see to it that they can bring a sort of solidarity, they can ensure a proper smooth of communication, they can also show a sort of cooperative attitude, and they can try to distract, fine, the conflicts and try to resolve the conflict. And a leader also sees that time is shared fairly. Time should be shared. Time to be shared fairly, my dear friend. So, proper sharing of time is also in the purview of the leader. Language. This is also very important. Fine. I had somewhere mentioned reflective thinking. So, I think that reflective thinking should take some of my time in discussion. I mean, John Dewey, an American philosopher, proposed a 5-step process which is known as the reflective thinking method. And for directing discussion when there is a problem solving group, so defining the problem, analyzing the problem, establishing the criteria, generating potential solutions, and reaching a consensus. So, in case your group also comes across a sort of conflict, say to it that you bring a sort of reflective thinking method, apply that reflective thinking method and come out of the crisis of the conflict like situation. Now, what are the roles and responsibilities? As I have already said, that you have two responsibilities, as an individual, as a group. As an individual, what you need to do? You need to commit yourself to the goals of the group, and the goal of the group is to come to a consensus, either to a consensus with a different. So, align personal goals with the objective of the group. Then your individual task, speaking, initiating, contributing, fine, and seeing that everyone gets the opportunity. Then one thing is very important, please try to refrain from personal antagonism. For example, sometimes there may be conditions of dissent, and a person can become so furious that they may say, that is completely a ridiculous idea. Do you have any idea how much money it would cost us? Fine. Even if you are trying to oppose the idea, it is always better that you can show a politeness in your behavior, and you can say, even if you are disagreeing, but you can always say, that sounds a fair solution, but I am afraid it would be highly cost ineffective, isn't it? Now see, the same thing has been said, but in a different manner. So my dear friend, what I need to inform you here is that in a GD, however ambitious you are, and you try to ensure that you are the leader and you disagree with others' views, but in order to do so, please see that the statement that you pass on or the exchanges that you make should be polite, should be in a polished manner. Now, see that there is complete participation. At any point of time, if there is a silence or lull, the entire group has to be responsible. So, if there is a reticent member, meaning thereby silent person, because the panelist is also looking at how the silent people are treated. So, the silent people should be encouraged to contribute, fine, and then try to provide an amicable milieu for discussion by listening attentively and allowing a free exchange of ideas. In this regard, let us take a quote by Eleanor Roosevelt, who says, "Great minds discuss ideas, average minds discuss events, small minds discuss people." So, you are not to discuss people, you are not to take the names of the people and say that your idea is completely incorrect. No, you may always say that while this can be your personal idea, but we should also look at how much cost it will entail. Now, one should always have a sort of tendency to steer forth the discussion, that there is no lull, there is no silence. One should never try to haste towards the solution without exploring the problem thoroughly. If somebody just in the beginning says, I favor this idea, or I completely think that this is a wrong statement or whatsoever, then there is no point of the discussion going further. So, one must try to adopt a disciplined procedure, fine. You must be aggressive, you must be assertive, but you must not be dominating. Leadership has to be shared. One should always try to follow the prescribed code of discipline or the norms in the discussion. That is what can make you a creative contributor in a GD. There are conflicts in a GD, as we have already said, that there are certain causes of conflict. Conflict can arise out of incompatible value systems. Sometimes one tries to dominate others, sometimes one tries to compete for a limited resource, sometimes lack of communication, sometimes unfair treatment, but then the conflict has to be resolved through clear communication skills, listening, negotiation strategy. We have already talked about negotiations, and then one should always try to show that one has got a good behavioral strategy in discussing. The last point that one should also not forget is that language plays a very vital role in any form of communication, and not even in a GD. So, one must as a participant use language effectively. For example, here are certain lines, you can take any of them. Say, if you disagree, again you can say, while the point made by Mr. Y sounds worthy, some clarification would make things clear. Sometimes you are not allowed to complete and you are unhappy, then you can always say, I would appreciate if I am allowed to complete my viewpoint. sometimes you may find that the group is deviating, and at that time you can intervene and say, perhaps we are distracting from the topic, we are deviating from the topic, and that will actually make your task easier. There are certain do's and don'ts in a GD. One should always try to reach the venue in time, one should be properly dressed, one should organize one's thought clearly before one speaks, one should always be ready to withdraw in case of a better suggestion. There is no such rigidity like that in a debate. One should always see that there are certain things to be avoided. For example, not to come to a hasty conclusion, not taking an extreme stance, not repeating wild gestures, and not shouting at inert speakers. Not names should be called to the inert participant. Rather, in this regard, let us be reminded of what Noam Chomsky says: rational discussion is useful only when there is a significant base of shared assumptions. So, please remember that here we have gathered for a shared assumption. One should always be ready to compromise. One should try to see that one makes proper use of non-verbals. One should always have a balanced outlook on the strength and weaknesses. Even though there are disagreements, then disagreements could be resolved by democratic measures. One should never try to dominate. One should not always continue to speak just to give the impression that he is the leader. Always see to it that you are not there to destroy the harmony through your unpleasant activities. My dear friends, when we gather for a group discussion, all of us are alike in some way or the other, but we have a sort of diverse ideas. And rightly as George Patton says, if everyone is thinking alike, then someone is not thinking. That is why there has to be difference of opinion, but then difference of opinion should not mar your disposition of being polite. One needs to be polite, and then if you practice all these things, you will find that group discussions become very effective, and you can always come to a decision, because the major aim of a group discussion is to reach a consensus and to make certain decisions, and for that the participation of all the members is a must. So, before we come to the end of it, let us take a quote by Margaret Mead, an anthropologist, an author, an orator of 1960s, who says, "A small group of thoughtful people could change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has." My dear friends, so long as we are here on earth, it will be our tendency as human beings to formulate groups, and when there are groups, there are conflicts, but conflicts can be resolved in order to create opportunities that actually can bring happiness from all sides. Where there is no conflict, there cannot be any resolutions. So, these conflicts are to be resolved through discussion. So, let us be ready for a group discussion. The next time when you go to attend or participate in a group discussion, please keep all these things into consideration, and you will emerge as a triumphant communicator, as a successful leader. With this, let me come to the end of this talk. Thank you very much. I wish you all a good night.